My name is John Park, and it's a pleasure to be here with LAmuscle.tv. I have been in Los Angeles for going on 24 years now. From Johannesburg, South Africa originally, where I was born, and pretty much grown up in the health and fitness gym industry. My father, the late Reg Park, you could say was really one of the pioneers of the industry. He's originally from the UK, from Leeds, his hometown, and he came to live in South Africa many years ago. He was there 50 odd years, and he was the first man to win the Mr. Universe 3 times, but to this day the only man to win it at 7-year intervals. He opened up a chain of gymnasiums in South Africa which were very successful for at least 20 years. He would bring out the top current star every year to do a series of exhibitions throughout South Africa during the Christmas period, which was summertime in South Africa, and they would tour the coast, and just a great atmosphere everywhere they went. And in 1966 he was doing an exhibition in the UK, in London, and the promoter of the show, a guy by the name of Wag Bennett, who's also one of the pioneers in the UK, him and his wife Diane had a gym in London for many years. They're from Portsmouth originally. He said to my dad, there's a youngster here who's just won the Junior Mr. Europe, and you're his idol and he wants to meet you. And lo and behold, it was Arnold. Couldn't speak very good English at the time, but he knew that my dad would bring the current top guy every year to South Africa. Over the years he brought out Larry Scott, Bill Pearl, from the UK Len Sell, Dave Draper, Frank Zane, Boyako, you name it. And he said to my dad, when will you bring me to South Africa? My dad said, if you win the Mr. Universe, I'll bring you. The following year he won the Universe, and he came, and at 19 years of age he hung out with the family, and my dad used to wake him up every morning at like 4:35 to go and work out. And he said to him, if you get your calves up, you'll be the greatest bodybuilder in the world. They kept up a friendship to the day that my dad died. And in 1970, Arnold issued my dad a challenge to compete against him in the Mr. Universe. He wanted to have the opportunity to compete against his mentor. So my dad accepted the challenge. He only really trained for 3 months for that competition. And he had also opened up 2 new locations in his gym business that year. And you have to consider that he was almost 20 years, just shy of 20 years older than Arnold. But he accepted the challenge, and one thing with my dad, very highly principled and totally against the use of anabolic steroids. So he never took steroids. It was common knowledge that Arnold took, he admitted it, probably very small doses as opposed to the guys of today. So they competed, and he beat my dad by half a point. If you look at these 2 physiques in the lineup, I think you could be the judge as to who's the more symmetrical and balanced physique of the 2 in terms of the waistline, the shoulder line, the pectoral line. It's pretty remarkable when you compare one as a completely natural physique and almost 20 years older. In 2001, Arnold presented my dad with the Lifetime Achievement Award at his annual show, because my parents were always guests there. It's interesting when I think back how this whole personal training evolved, which is now not just a phenomenon in this country. Certainly I would say Los Angeles was the mecca for it, California. For the most part, you know, people look down upon it. They looked down upon it with disdain. They thought, you know, it was over the top, he was weird. There was this misconception with a lot of coaches from various different athletic endeavors that weight training slows you down. And we've been hearing that since the beginning of time. Well, I've never seen any written or physiological evidence to that effect. When I think back, my dad opened up his chain of gymnasiums in South Africa in the late 50s. And he was doing personal training before it was even known. Having assessed these clients' physiques, and this was for both male and female, they would then get a program, and they would be shown this program. And this was all inclusive for a monthly membership, which was nominal in those days. It was, talking South African terms, was probably about 15, 20 rands, which was nothing. So these clients were actually getting the benefit of personal training long before it even came in vogue. Of course, this followed suit into all the gyms in South Africa, because many of his ex-pupils then went on to open up their own facilities, and that's how the gym business grew in South Africa. He was really the pioneer. So he was the pioneer of the gym business. He put bodybuilding on the map. Safe to say that probably at that time, 60s and 70s, Reg, along with Gary Player, who was South Africa's premier golfer, who was a world champion golfer, were South Africa's probably two most celebrated athletes. If you get two athletes of assuming they have equal ability, size, height and weight is the same, technical ability is the same, the stronger athlete is always going to come out on top. And I proved this. And then a lot of these coaches initially were like poo-pooing weight training. Of course, again, the old adage, weight training slows you down. And this set a phenomena for all the athletes. And now, I think, quite frankly, if I look back, now in the next century, there's not a top athlete in the world today, in any sphere, who doesn't incorporate strength training into their programs. If they do, they simply get left behind. Not the past Olympics we had, the previous one, 5 years ago. Everybody was talking about Michael Phelps. And it was common knowledge, his coach said he didn't do any strength training because he spent so much time in the pool and he had a lot of natural ability. When I saw him swim in the trials last year, the first thing I turned around and said to my wife when I saw his physique, I said, he's been working out. His physique had changed incredibly from 4 years before. Sure enough, and people said to me at the previous Olympics, what do you think about Phelps not working out? As if to say, well, one really doesn't have to work out to be a champion. I said, he's great, but I can tell you one thing, if he did work out, if it didn't help him with his swimming, there's two areas that would help him with explosivity. One is the dive, and one is the push-off from the wall coming out of a turn. And sure enough, in an interview with Phelps's coach, he said that today, for newfound speed, you have to work out. And if you watched Phelps swimming, the two areas where he excelled were his dives, and in numerous events he would go into the turn not lying first, but would come out of the wall first, and his turns were exceptional. I worked with Oscar de la Hoya for 9 fights when he was undefeated. I'm currently working with the world welterweight champion Miguel Cotto. So boxing has unfortunately been the most difficult sport, because a lot of the boxing trainers are very, very much into that old way of thinking. They're very archaic, their training methods are archaic, and we've had to butt a lot of heads and make a lot of changes over the years. They would typically, the week of a fight, in order to make weight for their weigh-in, they would dry out completely and virtually starve themselves and stop drinking any fluids whatsoever, which is stupid, because water is a natural diuretic, and the more you drink, the more you flush out. And so by the time these guys would get into the ring, they would be totally depleted. And it's so often been said in boxing that the guys have left it in the gym. They haven't left it in the gym. They've just prepared so hard for so many months, and then they just ruin it all in a week. Initially, when we started working with De La Hoya, he would say that he would always feel after the last week of training prior to the fight, he'd walk into the ring and all his joints were sore. And we explained to him, A is because he was dehydrated, so there was no fluid in the joints. B is because he would starve himself, and most of them don't have very good nutritional habits anyway. They eat a lot of fried foods and junk foods. It's just ignorance. And we explained to him that when your body has utilized all its energy, it'll take it from the next available source, being the muscle. And you would cannibalize the muscle for energy purposes. When that is depleted, you then go into connective tissue, and you cannibalize the connective tissue. You take out the protein from the connective tissue, so you're going to get weak joints. So it's been an interesting process for us to try and re-educate these people. Some are willing to make the changes, some aren't. Those who are go far. Those who revert back to their old ways, i.e. Oscar, they become unstuck.